Hello, welcome to PM Express. My name is Evans Mensah, and tonight we are saving the economy with a question: IMF or broke? As you know, today the Bank of Ghana has announced a raft of measures aimed at beginning this long journey towards saving this economy. It was after a long retreat, first with cabinet and then with all ministers, and then the MPs joined. The president called all of them into the room and they plotted a plan towards recovery. Now we know part of the plan has been made public by the Bank of Ghana. We are now expecting the finance minister to also this week come forth with the remainder of the plan that government and the president believes is going to be as we say, call it a silver bullet that will indeed, reverse the terrible economic downturn that we are facing as a country within the bigger global context. And so what did the Bank of Ghana do, and will that solve the problem? But then we're also going to be talking about going forward as we anticipate what the finance minister is about to say this week. What are the options? Should IMF be on the table? And if not IMF on the table, doesn't mean we're going to go broke, because government is clear IMF is off the table. But should it be off the table? And if it's off the table, what are the other options that government can consider? Those are the things we'll be talking about tonight on PMS. So let's go to some of the specifics as we know it. So this is the Bank of Ghana today. If you haven't heard, and this is the first time you're hearing, the Bank of Ghana has done a few things. They've increased the policy rate. Basically, they've increased the interest rate as of today quite significantly. If you read the Reuters has reported that this increase of 14.5 to 17% is the largest jump in 20 years, right? So that's a significant jump. What this does essentially is the cost of banks borrowing from the central bank. Banks do borrow from the central bank, right? The cost of banks borrowing from the central bank will go up. What that means is the cost at which you also borrow from the banks will also go up. That is to mop up excess liquidity in the system. In other words, you've seen inflation going up above 15%. It's simply a case of economics 101. There's so much money chasing so few goods, you have inflation. The Bank of Ghana believes if you mop up the excess liquidity, excess money in the system, it will help with inflation. But there are other benefits there also. We're going to be getting into that tonight. But fundamentally, that's what this is going to do. It's going to help with inflation. But it's also going to make the cedi attractive a bit, because people don't trust the cedi. But with this particular move, the cedi is going to become attractive. For those people who are investing, this is going to be key for them. People are going to be moved to, cedi-denominated instruments, etc. So the Bank of Ghana has moved with this particular policy right now today, increasing the policy rate significantly. But as many have said, it is a double-edged sword. And so once you increase the interest rates, it could also stifle money that will be available for small businesses that are recovering on the back of the COVID pandemic. But it's which of these is the worst of two evils, I guess, is the question that the Bank of Ghana was faced with, and I've gone with this. Let's put it in context. Many countries around the globe have done this, by the way. Russia did it recently when the ruble started collapsing. And so it is a very established, safe bet policy intervention when you're having the economic crisis you're having currently. But the biggest question for me is, why now? Why did the Bank of Ghana wait this long to do this? Something they've always done. It's one of the simplest tools you have in your arsenals to throw out a problem when your economy is facing the challenge we're having right now. So why has the Bank of Ghana waited this long to make this move? Why not last month when the cedi was showing signs of non-recovery? Why now? Did they wait too late to jump in when the cedi is now at what, 8.5 to the dollar? So we'll talk about that. And then there were other things that they also did, all really within the same concept and the same idea of trying to reduce liquidity in the system. Now, so the government itself is telling us they're going to do a few things. When you get into an economic crisis, take your own family. When you start struggling with money, the first thing you need to do, nobody will tell you this, is you have to start tightening your belt, cutting the expenditure. If you eat 3 times a day, you possibly begin to eat once a day. Government says, government is going to do that. This country is going to do that. So they're going to be reviewing all flagship programs, including the free SHS. It's not off the table. It's not off the table. That's one of the things that government says they will be doing. They also be cutting government expenditure. They have announced this already by 20%. That is quite a significant cut. When they announced this early in the year, I think it was January, the market reacted positively to it, right? So let's see the cuts. Government says we'll do that. Cut some margins and levies to reduce fuel prices is something that they, on the show last week, the deputy energy minister confirmed will happen, right? So these will be cut to try and, this is going to help cushion you. And then this is helping tighten our expenditure. So you're going to cut what we're spending so there's more money to do other things. And then if you look at the monetary policy rate trend over time, this was 26%. That's very high. In 2016, we're going to talk to a man who was there when it was 26%. And it came down to 25% in 2017, and it's been dropping ever since. And we came to, this is January 2020, and it's gone back to 17. So that's quite a significant jump in a long time, right? I mean, from the increase that we've seen there. We'll try and put this in context for you pretty shortly. And then you look at the import cover figures in months. Now, this is the IMF dilemma I'm beginning to emphasize here. Why is this important? When your import cover, your foreign reserves fall below a certain threshold, below 2 months import cover, you have no choice than to run to the IMF. And as you see here, this is according to the Bank of Ghana. We are, if you look at 2014 to 2015, when we last went to the IMF, we were in dangerous territory. We were 2.8 months when we went, according to the Bank of Ghana. That's when we went to the IMF. What is the import cover? The foreign reserves you have stored out of this country that we use as a country to do business. So those who have loaned us money, we pay them with that money, right? And when they see that that money is going down, they begin to panic that you can't pay us anymore. You're going to be defaulting. And that is when countries rush to the IMF. It is a very dangerous place to be. You can't do business. You can't buy your fuel. You can't buy your petrol, your products on the market. It is a dangerous place to be. That is the apocalypse when your foreign reserves shrink to these levels what it was. And that's a who will join us tonight, by the way, to have a conversation. But that is the trend. We saw it going down from a high of 4.1 months of import cover, all the way to 2.8. And then when it got there, we had to go to the IMF. As we speak today, we don't have that problem. So that is a saving grace right now, which is the fact that we are 4.3 months of import cover, which is quite good if you look at it. And in real terms, we're talking about $9.5 billion. So the government, we have money in foreign reserve, external reserve. This is good. $9.5 billion. But this is money that we can't touch. If you start dwindling this, you are in trouble. And so people are saying, why don't you just simply fall on this to shore up the city? Pump the money into the system to shore up the city. Government says, government is not doing that yet. The finance minister, the Bank of Ghana announced today that they've pumped some money into the system to support targeted agencies and businesses that import in bulk. So the BDCs that import the products have received support. So targeted, but not, just pumping the money into the system. Because if we do this and we start dwindling this, we're going to be in trouble. If you go back to when we went to the IMF, we're doing 5.5 billion, 4.7 billion, according to the Bank of Ghana at that time. So there's a significant difference here that you don't want to touch. You don't want this to become this. And so this is important where we are. And then inflation. Part of the reason the Bank of Ghana had done this is also to make sure the inflation is brought under control. And this is a graph that shows you where we are and where we are between 2014 and 2015. Inflation was climbing all the way to 16.80%. Now we are just about 15%. That is 15.7%. And the Bank of Ghana believes what they've done today will help it go back down. And if it does that, you may get some relief. You may get some relief at the pumps. And some of the things you buy, the prices will be stable at the pumps. So today we're going to be talking about, will the measure save the economy? If not, what else must government add? My guest joining me tonight for a conversation after the break. And that is, you had Saeed Boakye is joining me. And, we have two academics and obviously a think tank brains joining us for the conversation tonight. Stay with me after the break. We'll come back with more. And joining me right now is Saeed Boakye. Saeed Boakye is a former finance minister. Also joining me tonight is Dr. Saeed Boakye, with the Senior Research Fellow, Institute of Fiscal Studies. And I'm delighted to be joined also tonight by Dr. Japoma Jekadako. He's a development economist and senior lecturer at University of Ghana Business School. Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady. I want to start with you, Dr. Saeed Boakye. Give me your quick thoughts on the Bank of Ghana's initiatives today, with the mainly being the increase in the policy rate.
I wasn't there and I have not heard it, to be frank with you. So I cannot comment on that right now. You've gone through it, but I was not with you. And I have not read about what they have, released today.
Saeed Boakye, I mean, you've seen it. You've seen the increase in the policy rate. Well, what's your thoughts on it? Is it timely?
Yeah, is it?
Will this solve the problem?
Good evening to your listeners. I hope you can hear me, please. Yes, I think it is timely, and I think Bank of Ghana's statement, gives a number of reasons, and I think that the way to begin is to go to the authority itself. And they pointed out to the external, which saw a certain delicate balance between the fact that commodity prices, were favorable when it comes to exports, but also that because of, global developments, the imports, was also weighing. So when it came to the external, you could see a delicate balance with the tilt, that tended to be favoring imports. And therefore, there was some pressure, from the external, on the economy, which needed, attention. I think they also look at the financial sector, which from what I read and from, not much in your analysis, seems to be, healthy or recovering, in essence. If you look at the recent downgrades and things that have come, I think it's probably good news for the economy that, underlying that was some resilience, that appears to be emerging, and we would hope that the financial sector, would continue, to recover. That's not to say that, it's only the domestic indicator. There were other indicators which I believe Fitch took into account and the other ratings agencies. But I think Bank of Ghana emphasized, strongly, the fiscal situation again. And I think this is about the third or so or fourth PC, report. And in fairness to the bank, they've been pointing to the fiscal situation for quite some time now, including speeches that were delivered, not just by the governor himself, but by some of the deputies and officials. And I think they continue to emphasize that the economy, so when you take all these matters together, and considering that, in fact, I would say that the last MPC, reports and some of the speeches were quite scathing, on the fiscal performance. And admittedly, if you look at the fiscal report deficit, we can go into detail. You see that government is also an active player in the markets in terms of financing the deficit. We are not able to go to the markets since last year. And there's no announcement yet because we're in March. This is about the time going into the spring meetings that, we do see, the government making arrangements to go to the external markets. Apart from the estimates in the budget being very conservative and the likelihood of no access, it means that, Bank of Ghana did not see much of an inflow to support the economy from the external side, as far as the sovereign bonds that have been coming in and have been helping in various ways, including debt refinancing, and other debt refinancing in particular, which, helps, and then also financing the deficits, the financial side, or the exchange, side, the inflows that come in, which goes to support the reserve. So I think if you look at all this and the external factors which they point to and their effect, I think it's important to look at that. They look at not just crude oil prices, but we all know that one of the concerns globally is the fact that both Russia and Ukraine are the source of grain, exports, to the about 30% of grain comes from that region. And so that's going to cause a serious disruption. So I was happy to see the bank, draw attention to that on our domestic economy, and they give figures. The imports that we, of grains from that, including fertilizer, and then also the performance of manganese, which is the export to the region, which is going down, apart from oil. So I think the Bank of Ghana statement had to be read in its entirety to see a bank that is struggling, from pressure from the fiscal.
Yeah, which, but let me ask you a more direct question. I mean, the big headline from that announcement today was the key measure they did was the announcement of the increase in the policy rate. Is that a solution to the problem? What's your verdict on that? Is that good?
Yes, it is one of. Yes, it's a major solution to the. I answered yes, and then
how much of a difference? I guess how much of a difference do you think it will make to the challenges we're facing?
Well, considering that government is going to go to the market heavily, there's going to be crowding anyway in anticipation of interest rates going up, and then the pressures, apart from the pressures from the fiscal, you have the global pressures that are coming in, and also Bank of Ghana is watching the global trend, both the Bank of England, as they pointed out, as well as the U.S. Federal Reserve, which has been very reluctant, are both increasing rates, including the, some of the strong economies and the BRIC economies. So it's also following a trend. So I believe that it is, I would say it's slightly delayed, and that's why probably we are seeing such a big, increase. But I think it is balanced considering all the factors. That's why I try to go into the factors. But yes, it is a significant move and it's necessary.
Okay,
because if you are going to resolve the problems,
just stay with me briefly, because you just touched on something I'll come back to, but I want to quickly get the thoughts of a doc on this quick point. I'll come back to the point about the timing of it, and I think it's very crucial. Dr. Japoma, I mean, we've seen the Bank of Ghana, move today. I was talking about saving the economy, and their move is to raise the policy rate. And we've just had the former finance minister say, yes, it is a good move. You agree with that?
Yes, I do. I do agree with that. I think I was very excited to hear the Bank of Ghana in their press release talk about increasing their policy rates. I think that given the conditions that we find ourselves in currently, that was the way to go for Bank of Ghana. We shouldn't forget that the UK and the US have both increased. They have resorted to a tighter monetary policy as well because of all the happenings around their economy. They are also experiencing some increase in inflation here and there, and they have tightened their economy through the monetary side as well. And therefore, it was important for us to also do same so that our bonds would be attractive for investors. So this was a very good move by the Central Bank of Ghana.
Okay, great.
And also taking into consideration.
Please go on, Doc.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, so taking into consideration that our currency has also been depreciating over this period, it was a good move to help salvage the situation, at least in the short term. Yes.
I mean, and by the way, I mean, let's break this down for those who are watching us and may not understand what this means for them. For the ordinary man on the street who is struggling with fuel prices, who is struggling with transport fares, who is struggling with unstable prices, price volatility, inflation. The ball of kinky he bought yesterday, he goes back tomorrow, and the price has changed. Dr. Japoma, explain to me how that ordinary man on the street, including myself and you, by the way, how this move by the Bank of Ghana will affect us.
Okay, so an increase in the policy rate obviously feeds into what we call the Ghana reference rate. And that Ghana reference rate is sort of the benchmark rate that the banks would actually use in determining the level of interest rates in the economy. And therefore, we expect that once the Ghana reference rate has gone up because of the increase in the policy rate, we should see interest rates in the economy going up. Now, looking at the situation we find ourselves in, and looking at the fact that over some period, over the last 2-3 years, we've seen interest rates decline. This act is more like balancing it against the situation that we find ourselves in as far as the depreciation of the currency is concerned. Now, we see that an increase in the monetary policy rate, obviously leading to an increase in the domestic, in the interest rate, would cause domestic bonds to become more attractive. And once domestic bonds become attractive, and also bearing in mind, like I said earlier, that UK and the US have also increased their rates, it's important for us to also remain competitive so that our currency can be stabilized in a way. Because if we are able to keep the non-resident holders of domestic debt from taking away the capital that they invested in here, it helps us in a way. It helps stabilize our currency. We don't see a lot of capital flight. Mind you, the problems we are having as far as the fuel is concerned, apart from us experiencing an increase in the world market prices of oil, also comes from the fact that our currency is depreciating. Because remember, importers also need some foreign currency to be able to import the fuel in here. And once they import it here, once our currency is depreciating, we feel it at the pumps, right? So if we are able to do something about our currency depreciation, it also helps relieve some of us, or relieves all of us from the pressures that we are facing currently. So yes, tightening up in a way would affect us, because for the business person, they are going to struggle a bit as far as interest rates are concerned. But you are balancing that against our current situation and then making the best choice. And I think that's what the central bank has done.
I mean, Mr. Tekwe, so all of you agree that this is a good move. I've heard two main points here, that it's going to help stabilize our CD somewhat. It is obviously very good. It will make our CD attractive a bit in the bonds, etc. So the question that you touched on, let me ask that more substantively. If this is good, why now? I mean, is it too little, too late? Did it come too late? Why didn't the Bank of Ghana? Because from everything I've heard, this is a simple, almost usual central bank intervention almost everywhere in the world. And if it's this good, why had the Bank of Ghana waited this long? Is it too little, too late?
Yes, and I think we should separate the justification we are giving now, from recent past developments. Let me give you two examples. In 2020, Bank of Ghana financed the deficit by $1.7 billion equivalent, higher than what we took as a loan, from the IMF, right? 1.7 billion, that's what the 10 billion, meant. Now, the reason Bank of Ghana gave, go back and look at the policy, monetary policy statement. It never said it was giving it on account of COVID, even though COVID, was impacting the fiscal. It said that it was giving it because if the government were to go to the market, right? I'm not quoting verbatim, but if we're going to the market, they were going to borrow at a higher rate, and also credit was drying up for government, which means that Bank of Ghana was bailing out government. That is pure deficit financing, if we take that logic, right? So what does it mean? Bank of Ghana at that stage preempted government from going to the market to borrow at a higher rate, and it found itself lagging behind. So one, Bank of Ghana is just playing catch up because the policy rate, that we have been seeing is nowhere near the market rate, the average market rate and other rates. TB rates, you see government rates, including the factoring and other things that have been taking place, which some on our side have called off budget. They were all cushioning the government and therefore not making government borrow at the right rate. Now, as we talk about the deficit and ability of government to finance the deficit, a question that remains hanging was, we were just told by the World Bank that before 2020, in fact, there were problems already, and that arrears alone were about 5 billion. What was in the budget was less than 2 billion, right? So are we going to see that correction? If that is the case, then it means that, the ability of government to go to the market, was, being downplayed. So the fiscal was a big problem. And it seems Bank of Ghana, by playing that role in the market, tolerating commercial banks, if I may put it that way, for want of a better expression, and also the fact that they themselves, were doing deficit financing, which was up to about 50%, of the deficit, first time in 30 years, meant that, the rates which government was paying was artificially low. And therefore, I see what is going on now, if you compare commercial rates, as playing catch up, right? So I think the fact that we are justifying and say that global events have come up again and are going to worsen that situation if we didn't make a correction should not be taken as endorsing the fact that, the management of the economy and the support which Bank of Ghana has been giving, to government is something which we are also endorsing. No, I think we need to separate that. So I hope that this explains some of the points that, why we are coming to that position. Now, it would have been worse.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, so you agree? Your point is that this measure that has been taken today and announced should have been taken way before now.
Yes, back in 20. In fact, if you take the Article 4, the IMF 2019 Article 4, some of us pointed out, there was a gap there of 3, I believe 2 to 3 or something percent, which was disclosed. Remember, that's 2019. November, Article 4, before COVID became a major issue in 2020. We were reading the budget, and that gap was never reflected in the deficit, and which is what the World Bank is now talking about, as 5% of GDP. If you were to add the 5% of GDP of arrears, to the deficit, then the fiscal balance, was not 11% for 2020. It was about 15 or 16%, right? And so these are some reasons why, one is saying that, the correction is overdue, but then the bank has always pointed to, as a balance, let me reiterate, the bank has always, pointed to the fiscal situation. And in fact, they came out first warning about the fiscal situation before even Fitch, came up, with its downgrades and others, which became a heartache for the economy.
I mean, Dr. Japoma, so from what Mr. Boakye said, this came a bit too late, but it's here now. I mean, do you agree that, of course, this is one of the tools in the crisis we are in? If it's just one of the tools and it's not adequate, as the assumption goes, what else should the government? So this is the central bank's intervention. I mean, for you, as we sit right now with the current economic crisis, what else should the government be? What would be your top suggestion in addition to the measures we've had today to saving this economy from collapse? Hello, Dr. Japoma, please unmute for me.
Sorry. So we've seen the monetary side act, and the monetary side is clearly giving a signal that they are ready to fix some of the issues that we have. So it's important for the fiscal side to act as well. And fiscal side acting would mean that governments would have to rationalize some of its expenditure. And that's what we should be seeing the government do now. We need to see the government rationalize its expenditure. We need to see the government looking at the parts of the expenditure that is not really efficient, so that it cuts down on that part and tries to save the economy from its woes at the moment. So if you ask me about some of the things that I'm expecting the government to do, I'm expecting the government to review some of its flagship programs, and I've already heard that it's going to be reviewed. The flagship programs are going to be reviewed. Top amongst them, I'm expecting the government to review the Free SHS program. Free SHS program, reviewing it, the program itself is a very good program, no doubt, but I expect it to be targeted. And so I think that now is the time. Fortunately, we are seeing some JHS students now going to enter secondary school. This is the time to ask parents who can pay to actually pay. If I say parents who can pay, I'm not asking us to leave it to the parents to decide whether they are able to pay or not. But then we can decide on who to give some of these freebies to. And then we can do some proper targeting over there. I also expect that there will be some reduction in travel. I know that some of these suggestions that I'm giving as far as rationalization of expenditure is concerned may not mean much, because some people may say that this may be marginal. But I think that sending a signal out there that we are ready to consolidate our fiscal position is very, very important for the credibility of the country. And so these are some of the things that I think we should be doing now. We should be looking at cutting down the size of government and many other things. I mean,
Mr. Saeed, you were there the last time we were in an economic model in 2014, 2015. And if I recall correctly, one of the first things you tried to do was to develop this homegrown solutions to the problems. And it sounds very similar to what I've just heard Dr. Japoma just articulate, which government is also now beginning to sound. The information minister has been doing the media rounds today, and has been sounding government is about to review flagship, government is cutting expenditure, similar things you try to do. It didn't, it didn't stop us from going to the IMF. It didn't make much of an impact then, because we eventually had to go to the IMF. Yes. Do you believe?
I think you are missing. I think you are missing a bit of sequence there.
Okay.
We went to the IMF in early 2015,
okay,
not late 2015, and we attempted to implement the homegrown policy from 2013.
Yes.
Through 2014. And it was when the single spine, part of the problem we are having is the lack of acknowledgement that other governments in the past have also had their share, of global crisis and domestic crisis.
But you didn't have COVID. Later. You didn't have COVID. You didn't have Ukraine.
When you are just on the heels of global financial crisis, right? And when you have 2.5 years of gas not flowing to your economy, you remember all those things. And when you do a budget of $99 per barrel, and then it slumps to $35, below $30 per barrel, and never rose above 50%, you have started bearing. And when you have one oil field compared with 3 oil fields, if you want to make the comparison, one oil field compared with 3 oil fields, should we have prepared better for COVID? And by the way, we got $5 billion US, $5 billion US, 3/4 of what GRA brings to tackle COVID. Why are we in this situation? That's one of the highest, if not the highest, in West Africa. In the whole of Africa. 5 billion, I can go over it. US dollars, we're not talking Ghana cedis, including 1.7 from Bank of Ghana. And that's to tell you what the World Bank is saying, that there was a problem with the economy, and that is why 5 billion could not make a difference. Three-fifths of what, three-fifths of what a GRA brings in, which is about 67, according to the Bank of Ghana statement, or 70%. But if I may go to the sequence, what we attempted to do, yes, we attempted to tackle all this, including single spine. And the reason we went to the IMF, remember we were doing homegrown, one of the reasons was that the development partners started, to question the credibility of those policies. And therefore, budget support was drying up. And remember, grants were already low, right? So I'm only saying that, these things have happened already. But fast forward to 2017, yes, you pointed out to the growth, and other things that happened. It is against the background of a larger economy, against the background of 3 oil fields, against the background of money left in the sinking fund to pay the balance of the Kufuor bond, 550 out of 750. It was against the balance of ESLA, which should have been used to clear, the energy sector and the financial sector debt, including the what is owed to contractors. So that takes us to Prof's, question, expenditure. Remember, I'm on record. I can talk about expenditure now. I can talk about free SHS now because, Evans, I believe I said on your show back in 2017, after the budget was read, that free SHS in its unfettered form, and that is what Prof is saying, in its unfettered form, it's not sustainable, right? Of course, it wasn't palatable even to some, on our side. Forgetting that we had a progressively fee-free education. And when crude oil prices fell, and against the background of the challenges which I mentioned, remember, President Mahama said we were not going to do 200 schools. During the campaign, we were going to target 120, and even that we were going to finish 50, which tells you that free SHS is an expensive venture, right? We attempted first to use oil capping to tackle free SHS. Capping meant that, revenue that was to flow to get fund to DACF and to IGS and others were capped and thrown at some of these initiatives. It didn't help. Remember, there was a debate, again, I believe I spoke, if not on your show and others, where we attempted to sweep the money in the Heritage Fund. And by the way, when we talk about a healthy reserve, we should be very careful. Just a digression.
No. I'll come to that
reserve.
No,
that reserve.
I'll come to that. Okay. I'll come to the reserve
that reserve
question.
Includes,
Hold on.
So let me finish.
Continue your train of thoughts because I'll come there before we because that is key to the IMF question. I'll come to that.
Okay. So we attempted to sweep Heritage Fund, right? To support it. PIAC went after the government, if you remember, for allocating more than its fair share of ABFA that should go to capital, to education. It was a big debate. Then if you look at the borrowing that we have been making, especially 2019, sovereign bond, we allocated 2.2 billion Ghana cedis, of loan to support free SHS. It was a signal, and we posed a question. Are we saying, therefore, that free SHS is going to be dependent on borrowing, right? And then, as we, went forward, we came into this situation. So you see the sort of resources, apart from the growing economy, oil revenues and the rest, which has gone into free SHS, and not just free SHS, but other government initiatives. So yes, and I did say on a program with your colleague Raymond that it is time we talk about expenditure. We are talking a lot about e-levy, but we should talk about expenditure. So I agree with Prof. And every austerity program that has been done has never been based on revenue only. You must do some expenditure rationalization. You must do some cuts.
So Mr. Tekpe, the question then. So you agree homegrown policy is the way to go. Cut expenditure, review your flagship policies as government has said, etc., etc. Things you tried to do 2013, 2014, and still went to the IMF. Question is, if government begins to roll out these measures, as they've said they will that still save the economy from collapse?
First of all, I'll hold my comments on the prospects for the policies. They have not been detailed. Bank of Ghana has come with its portion, and that's why we are debating it, right? But remember, the minister is supposed to be going to Parliament either to answer a question or to make a statement.
Yes.
And remember, coincidence, we did the budget for 2016, 2015, November 2014, when the crude oil prices slumped, and in March, so it's exactly how many years, 4 or 5 years, since, so those developments, those pressures, the fact that, cocoa revenue was drying up against demand, and those cyclical things that we knew. So let us wait for the measures. I would always say, no, I don't want to preempt the minister. I don't want to preempt cabinet. They said we were not going to the IMF. So we need to go homegrown. And I'm glad that we're talking about homegrown. We believe strongly that Ghana, when we became middle income, should go homegrown. But if you ask me, some of the measures that we put in place, like strategic stock, like sinking fund to manage the debt, like stabilization fund, by the way, why didn't we put the revenue, up so that we measure it and we build the stabilization fund? We have reduced it to 33, million barely after taking 370, million for me to support COVID. That's among the monies that have gone. So let us wait patiently, for the fiscal side.
Okay.
Hopefully. And then we can augment it with the measures.
So the big IMF question. With all the measures that we've talked about, can we afford to survive without the IMF option? Drawing from your experience in 2013, 2014, and into 2015, can we survive, get the policy credibility, restore global confidence, investor confidence in the economy, and return this ailing economy back to good health without the IMF option on the table?
If you go to the MPC statement, or I believe, some of the speeches by the governors, they pronounce on the credibility already. In fact, I think it came before Fitch, and Fitch also said that whatever policies we are putting in place, or we said we had put in place, were not sufficient, to impress the markets, the ratings agencies. We talk about the ratings agencies. We don't talk about the equity funds that give us the loan. The loan is not one bulk amount, that you go and get when you do sovereign bond. It comes from literally, tens, with some big ones, but you may end up with about 50 or 60, contributing, from the US, to Europe and to other places, Asia, they all come in, Middle East, so that is the diversity, of the lenders that we have to, to be impressive, if we want to go to the market. So let us hope that this time around, unlike, the 2022 budget, and the downgrades and things that preceded and followed it, let's hope that the measures that are being put, together. And I would hope that the minister would announce both the monetary, financial, the fiscal, and then, the real sector, energy sector arrears. What are we going to do with it? It's one of the reasons we cannot reduce crude oil prices, because we have mortgaged, the price at the pump, because we have mortgaged, the ESLA.
Mr. Tekpe, do I hear you saying that depending on the extensiveness of the measures that the finance minister announces, we can indeed save this economy without going to the IMF?
Let's wait and see. We had that as a goal, but it's the reason, and let me point out why there could be a difficulty and why it takes you 3 years to do a correction. What do we need? At the moment, we haven't spoken about compensation. We are talking about free SHS. We haven't spoken about interest payments. We haven't spoken. These two are taking all the revenue, which means that you are borrowing, Evans, you are borrowing to pay the debt repayment. And when you put compensation and interest together, it is not even enough. So debt service is a big issue. Where do you get the money immediately, right, to refinance that debt? This is where, the credibility we are talking about from the IMF others becomes important, because what alternative institution can give you that money? Ghana hasn't got, a Fed behind it, a Bank of England behind it, and others, right? We are a developing country monetary sector.
But Mr. Tekpe, pardon me, I need to return to my question because of what you just said. So can we do without the IMF?
I'm hesitating because I have said on a record that we needed the IMF for these tactical reasons. The government has come out categorically that we are not going to the IMF. The discussions that have taking place now, cabinet, economic management team, and whatever, I have not seen in any of the statements that have been issued by the governor, or let me say MPC, by the Minister for Information, by the Minister for Finance, that we are going to the IMF. So it means that for me, I take it that until the minister speaks, we are not going to the IMF.
Okay.
If we are not going to the IMF, Evans, I'm afraid it's a moot question. So the question is, what is the alternative?
Yeah,
that is what
which is what we've discussed. Let me bring in Dr. Ajapoma on that question of the IMF. Doc, you've laid out the other alternatives in addition to the Bank of Ghana interventions. Let's talk about the IMF now. Can the government afford to take that off the table, depending on what measures they announce? And they've given us a hint of what they're looking at: rationalization and cutting expenditure, reviewing flagship programs. If they did this, can they take the IMF off the table?
For now, they would be able to take the IMF from the table. Because you see, apart from the IMF giving some technical support and support for our balance of payments, one of the things that they are going to be relying on would be our own homegrown solutions. So if we can take our destiny into our own hands as a country and start implementing some of the things that the IMF would require us to implement, we should be able to resolve our issues internally without necessarily going to the IMF. So, and that's what I've already spoken about in terms of expenditure rationalization. We also have to look for ways in which we can block all loopholes as far as revenue mobilization is concerned, try to expand our revenue sources as a country. And all these things can help us wean ourselves from going to the IMF.
Okay, now there's another point that I need to tackle here. One of the reasons, Dr. Japoma...
Can I come in quickly?
Yes, please, Mr.
Can I make just a quick point? Could I?
Yes.
You see, one of the reasons you also go to the fund is that when you have a budget situation as we have now, you need a World Bank, you need African Development Bank, you need a development partners, right? They are contributing to the budget. The budget we just read, they are contributing to it already, right? The World Bank just announced our country strategy, document, which is supposed to give us some money over a period of time. They do that periodically. So one of the critical questions is also whether these institutions, and as I mentioned earlier on, that part of the problem we face was that some of these, it's not just the IMF, some of these institutions were not in a position to bring in the money immediately, even though we had virtually paid down the single span arrears by the time we were doing the program. So I think that we are looking at the whole factors. We are educating, the public so that they understand, where the big question is, you have a deficit. Your revenue is not covering, part of compensation and interest together. It's not covering recurrent expenditure. It's not covering capital expenditure. It is not covering the loan that you have to repay. You have to borrow for all of this. If the external markets are blocked to you, in the short term, before your expenditure rationalization takes place, right, are you able to depend on your domestic markets to do that financing? That is the question that is facing us. And I think that is a question. there's no question. As I said, we attempted to do a homegrown policy with a policy support instrument, right? And we were bent. We were convinced by the time we were leaving office, whether with the sinking fund and with others, and the results were there to show that Ghana could go on its own. So this is not just an ideal, for one government or one party.
Okay, and very quickly,
the problem is your immediate is. That's what we have to be questioning. Are we capable? Or how deep is them? I remember the no residents. They may come back with interest rate, but that may not be enough. The no residents were taken at a point in time about 60% of the domestic bonds.
And by the way, I just have a minute to end, but I need to ask this question briefly, Mr. Tekwe. We stand currently with an external reserve of, I think, 4 months, 4.2 Bank of Ghana shares of import cover, months of import cover. And many say that is very healthy. And that if you look at that, really, almost $10 billion worth of external reserve. That definitely shows a certain prudence in that sense. You compared that to the time we went to the IMF in 2015, and we were down to the 2 months of import cover level. If you look at that
back then, please, yeah.
Sorry.
At the time we went, it was high. It was a crude oil prices. That's a sequence I was talking about.
Okay.
We brought it down.
But if you look at our foreign reserves currently, that certainly should give anybody confidence that we can service our debt in a short to medium term.
Quickly. Do you remember the controversy in the calculation of our reserves, where even the fund came in and said we could not include the oil revenues?
True.
I'd like to know whether the oil revenues we are not supposed to be touching, or is there a design, as with the Heritage Fund, to sweep those funds, go to Parliament, and sweep those funds. If they are included, then I don't think it should give us too much comfort. If they are not excluded, because crude oil prices have gone up, our exports output has also gone up, yes, and the commodity prices, gold, cocoa, and the rest are up, then it's healthy. So I only, say that we should exercise caution until we see the breakdown, because the oil revenues and the rest are part of the reserves.
Okay. Mr. Tekwe, I'm grateful for your time. That is the former finance minister, Dr. Jepoma Jekedako. Thank you very much also. Great thoughts there. I'll have you back on again, definitely, as we maneuver our way through this economic crisis. Tomorrow we're having a similar conversation, but something very different. You've heard government say that the flagship policies are all up for review, right? Nothing is off the table. It may include free SHS. It may include other things that government was doing for you that was supposed to pro-poor, interventions. If government were to touch it, how would that affect you? How would that affect you? And how do you survive without that, right? We're going to be talking about that with some of the players directly involved in implementing and benefiting from these flagship programs on PM Express tomorrow. As we wait for the finance minister to go to Parliament to deliver that all-important speech on how we are going to be pulling back from this break. Enjoy the rest of your day.